Good morning, family. I need to start by asking you something. Have you ever let someone else's words, someone else's attitude, someone else's issues ruin your peace? Maybe it was a coworker, a family member, or even a stranger on social media. You were fine until they showed up. And just like that, your joy got hijacked. But today we are going to break that cycle. Today I want to give you 7 keys that will teach you how to walk in such a level of peace that nothing and no one can steal it. Let's get something straight right now. Nobody can make you feel anything unless you allow them to. People can say what they want, act how they want, throw shade, roll their eyes, ignore your texts, gossip behind your back, but at the end of the day, how you respond is your decision. And the moment you understand that, you take back your power. See, most of us go through life thinking our emotions are at the mercy of other people's actions. If someone treats us with kindness, we feel good. If someone disrespects us, we feel hurt. If someone disagrees with us, we feel offended. But if your emotions are always dictated by how other people behave, that means they have the remote control to your peace. And I don't know about you, but I refuse to give that kind of power to anybody. Think about it. When you let someone else's negativity determine your mood, you are essentially saying, "Here, take my joy. You decide how I feel today." You're handing them the authority over your mind, your heart, your entire day. And if the person who upsets you the most is the one who gets to dictate how you feel, then aren't they the one in control of your life? That's a dangerous way to live. Now, don't get me wrong. This doesn't mean you won't feel emotions. You're human. You'll feel anger, frustration, disappointment. That's normal. But there's a difference between feeling something and being controlled by it. You can feel anger without acting in anger. You can feel offended without becoming offended. You can feel hurt without letting it harden your heart. The key is learning to process your emotions in a way that keeps you in control. Not the situation, not the person, you. Because here's the truth. Some people thrive on knowing they can get a reaction out of you. They love seeing you lose your cool because it means they've won. But when you stop reacting the way they expect you to, they lose their power over you. When they see that no matter what they do, you're still standing in peace, still walking in confidence, still smiling, that is when you know you've mastered control over your reactions. Now, I want you to ask yourself this. What would my life look like if I stopped allowing other people to dictate my emotions? Imagine waking up in the morning and deciding, today, nothing and no one will steal my joy. Imagine walking into work and not letting that one coworker's attitude ruin your entire day. Imagine getting cut off in traffic and instead of blowing up, just keeping your peace. That is what it means to own your reactions. It means you've decided that your emotions belong to you, not to the people around you, not to your circumstances, not to the enemy who would love nothing more than to distract you. You belong to you, let's be honest. Nobody likes being wrong. It doesn't feel good, it messes with our pride, it makes us feel small. And when we feel like someone is challenging us, our natural instinct is to fight back, to prove our point, to make sure everybody in the room knows that we are the one with the correct information, the right perspective, the better argument. But let me ask you something. What's the real cost of always needing to be right? Some of us have lost friendships, relationships, peace of mind, all because we couldn't let something go. We held on to an argument, kept replaying that one disagreement, kept crafting the perfect comeback in our minds, all because we were so determined to win. But here's the truth. Winning an argument doesn't mean you're winning in life. How many times have you walked away from a conversation, knowing you proved your point, but you still didn't feel any better? You got the last word, but the tension was still there. You made sure they knew they were wrong, but it didn't actually bring any peace. That's because when your goal is to win instead of to understand, you might win the argument, but you'll lose the connection. See, there's something dangerous about needing to be right all the time. It creates a pride that isolates you. It builds walls between you and the people around you. And worst of all, it blinds you. Because the more obsessed you are with proving your point, the less willing you are to hear anybody else's. You stop listening, you stop growing, you stop seeing the bigger picture. Think about it. When was the last time you argued with someone and they suddenly said, "Wow, you're totally right, I completely changed my mind"? It almost never happens, right? That's because most arguments aren't about truth. They're about ego. They're about two people fighting to defend their own perspective instead of trying to understand the other person's. And if you live your life always trying to prove you're right, you'll spend more time arguing than actually living. And let's be real, sometimes it's not even about the big things. It's about the petty, insignificant things that don't actually matter. You'll spend an hour arguing over what time something happened, what word somebody used, what exactly was said in a conversation 2 years ago, as if those details are worth sacrificing your peace. Is it really worth losing your joy just to be right? But the moment you learn to let go of that need, everything changes. When you stop feeling like you have to win every argument, you gain something even greater: peace. You realize that not every battle is worth fighting, not every disagreement needs to be settled, not every comment deserves a response. You stop wasting your energy on things that don't actually move your life forward. And instead of focusing on being right, you start focusing on what actually matters: growth, understanding, and peace. You ever been in a situation where somebody just pushed you too far? Maybe they disrespected you, maybe they lied about you, maybe they did something so out of line that every part of you wanted to let them have it. You could feel the anger rising. You had the perfect comeback locked and loaded. Your hands were already halfway to the keyboard, ready to send that text, type that comment, make that phone call, because you were not about to let them get away with it. But have you ever noticed how the moment right before you react is the most dangerous moment? That moment right before you pop off, that split second when you decide whether to let your emotions take control or whether to pause, that moment determines everything. Because here's the thing, your reaction will always be louder than the offense. What do I mean by that? I mean, people may not even remember what was done to you, but they will remember how you responded. They may not remember the rude comment that was said about you, but they will remember how you handled it. And sometimes we end up damaging our own reputation, our own peace, our own relationships, not because of what someone else did, but because of how we reacted to it. And that's why you have to pray before you pop off. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but I don't have time to pray in those moments. You don't understand. When someone disrespects me, when they cross the line, I need to handle it. I don't have time to stop and pray, but that's where we get it wrong. Because that moment right before you react, that's exactly when you need prayer the most. Prayer is not about making you passive. It's not about letting people walk all over you. Prayer is about shifting your focus so that you respond with wisdom instead of impulse. Prayer is about protecting your peace before you throw it away over something that won't even matter a week from now. Prayer is about reminding yourself, I answer to a higher authority, and my emotions don't get to run my life. Because let's be real. When you react in anger, do you ever actually feel better afterward? Maybe for a second, maybe in the heat of the moment, it feels good to say what you wanted to say, to clap back, to shut them down. But then what? The anger doesn't go away, the tension is still there, and now you've added more negativity into a situation that was already bad to begin with. But when you pause and pray, even for 10 seconds, something shifts. That deep breath, that whisper of God, help me see this from a different perspective, that decision to take a moment before responding, that can be the difference between escalating the drama And shutting it down, it can be the difference between saying something you'll regret and walking away with your peace intact. Because here's the truth. The enemy wants you to react out of emotion. He wants you to be quick-tempered, to lash out, to make decisions in the heat of the moment that will cause more damage than the original offense ever could. But when you stop and pray, you take back control. You remind yourself, I am bigger than this moment. I am stronger than this impulse. I am not going to let someone else's words or actions dictate my peace. And the best part, the more you practice this, the stronger you become. The first few times it might feel impossible. It might feel like everything in you wants to react. But the more you build the habit of pausing, praying, and then responding from a place of peace, the more powerful you become. You stop being easily shaken. You stop letting every little thing get under your skin. You stop living in a constant state of offense. And before you know it, you become the kind of person who can walk through the fire and still keep your peace. Have you ever been so frustrated with someone that they became the villain in your story? Maybe it was a coworker who disrespected you, a friend who betrayed you, a family member who just knows how to get under your skin. And in your mind, they are the problem. They are the reason you're upset. They are the reason your peace is gone. They're the reason you're losing sleep at night. But what if I told you they're not actually your enemy? See, one of the biggest tricks of the enemy is getting us so caught up in fighting people that we forget where the real battle is. He wants you to stay focused on who offended you, who hurt you, who let you down. Because as long as you're fighting them, you'll never see that the real attack is happening in you. The enemy is after your peace, your joy, your patience, your ability to love people even when they don't deserve it. He's after your focus, because if he can keep you distracted by who hurt you, he can keep you from walking in your purpose. If he can keep you so consumed with bitterness, anger, and resentment, he can keep you from hearing what God is trying to say to you. That's why the Bible says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Ephesians 6:12. In other words, the person you're mad at right now, they're not the real problem. There is something deeper going on. Think about it. How many times have you wasted days of your life being mad at someone, replaying the situation over and over in your head, imagining different ways you should have responded? How many times have you let a moment of offense turn into weeks of emotional turmoil? That's not just a coincidence. That's a strategy. And as long as you don't recognize it for what it is, you'll stay trapped in a cycle of reacting to people instead of taking authority over the spirit behind it. Because here's the truth. Hurt people hurt people. When someone lashes out at you, it's usually because they're dealing with something internally. When someone betrays you, it's because they're battling their own demons. When someone gossips about you, it's because they're insecure. But if you only focus on them, you miss the bigger picture. You waste energy trying to fight a battle in the wrong arena. Let's say you're in a war, but instead of fighting the real enemy, you spend all your time swinging at shadows. That's what happens when you make people the target instead of recognizing the spiritual warfare happening behind the scenes. You keep fighting, but you never actually win, because you're in the wrong battle. But the moment you realize what's really happening, everything changes. The moment you recognize that the person attacking you is just a tool the enemy is using to get to your heart, to your mind, to your spirit, that's the moment you stop reacting and start rising above it. You stop seeing them as your opponent and start seeing them as someone who needs grace just as much as you do. You stop letting people trigger you because you understand that this is bigger than them. And the most powerful thing you can do in those moments, instead of fighting them, start fighting in the spirit. Instead of arguing, pray. Instead of retaliating, release it. Instead of letting the situation consume you, hand it over to God. Because when you shift your focus from the person to the real enemy, you take back control of your peace, your purpose, and your power. Let's be real, we all have moments when we're not at our best. We've had days when we were short-tempered, when we said something we shouldn't have, when we acted out of frustration instead of wisdom. There have been times when we've been misunderstood, when people judged us for a single moment instead of looking at the full picture of who we are. And in those moments, what did we want? Grace. We wanted someone to see past our mistake. We wanted someone to understand that we were going through something. We wanted someone to say, you know what? That wasn't their best moment. But that's not who they really are. But here's the question. If we want that kind of grace for ourselves, why is it so hard for us to give it to others? See, when we mess up, we want people to look at the intention behind our actions. But when someone else messes up, we judge them by the impact of what they did. We give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but refuse to extend that same benefit to others. We expect people to be patient with our weaknesses, but we get frustrated when their weaknesses inconvenience us. And let's be honest, some of us are quick to cut people off over things that we ourselves have done before. We get mad when someone takes too long to text back, but we've done the same thing. We get frustrated when someone is in a bad mood, but we've had bad days too. Last week, we expect people to handle us with care, but we don't always handle them the same way. That's why grace is so powerful. Because grace says, I see your humanity and I choose to love you anyway. Grace says, you don't have to be perfect for me to treat you with kindness. Grace says, I'm going to give you the same patience, the same understanding, the same forgiveness that I want for myself. And let me tell you, grace will free you. Because the moment you stop holding people to impossible standards, you stop living in a constant state of disappointment. The moment you stop expecting perfection from imperfect people, you stop feeling so hurt every time they fall short. The moment you start seeing others through the lens of grace, you stop carrying unnecessary bitterness, offense, and frustration. Think about it. How many times has God given you grace? How many times has He forgiven you when you didn't deserve it? How many times has He covered you, loved you, and blessed you despite your mistakes? And if we have received that kind of grace, who are we to withhold it from others? Because the truth is, people are going to fail you. They're going to let you down. They're going to hurt you, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. And if you don't learn how to give grace, you'll spend your whole life walking around offended, angry, and disappointed. But when you learn to extend the same grace you need, you learn how to live with a heart that is free. And here's the best part. When you give grace, you're not just setting them free, you're setting yourself free. You're releasing the burden of always keeping score, of holding on to grudges, of waiting for people to make things right before you choose to move forward. Grace allows you to walk in peace no matter what other people do. And when you learn to live in that kind of grace, nothing and no one can take away your joy. At the end of the day, the only person who truly controls your peace is you. No one else has the power to dictate your emotions, unless you hand that power over to them. The way you respond, the way you handle offenses, the way you guard your heart, it all comes down to a decision to own your reactions, to release your need to be right, to pray before you react, to recognize the real battle, and to extend the same grace you hope to receive. Because life is too short to be constantly angry, constantly offended, constantly bothered by what people say or do. There will always be situations that test you, people who frustrate you, and moments when your patience is stretched to its limit. But when you refuse to let those things dictate your peace, you step into a life that is unshakable. A life where you walk in confidence, knowing that nothing and no one can pull you out of alignment with your purpose. So today, make the decision. No more giving away your peace. No more letting negativity take root in your heart. No more fighting the wrong battles. Instead, choose grace, choose wisdom, choose to walk in the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself. Because the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest, the angriest, or the most offensive. It's the one who knows how to rise above.